Black Laws, the third edition. Servitude. The condition of being bound to service. The state of a person who is subjected voluntarily or otherwise to another person as his servant. When we're looking at a citizen, whether here in Canada or in another state or another country, citizen is considered a servant. It's being held in servitude. Here in Canada, we're being held in servitude through the citizenship to Her Majesty, the Queen. Now, we understand that there's a fundamental human right and freedom that says no one shall be held in servitude. No one shall be held in servitude. However, the man or the woman here in Canada, through the oath or pledge of allegiance to Her Majesty, falls into servitude. Now, this can be done voluntarily or forced, meaning that it's implied consent. They say that, well, you just agreed because you never said anything, so we just voluntarily, or we just assumed for you the fact that you were pledged allegiance and had given your oath and were in servitude to Her Majesty. Or it's voluntary. For example, when people from another country come here to Canada, they voluntarily take this pledge of allegiance to Her Majesty without realizing what they're doing to their life, without realizing the bondage, the yoke that they're placing upon their life by doing this. Oath or affirmation of citizenship for Canada. I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 8.2. No one shall be held in servitude. So that Canadian citizen, i.e. the human being who's behind that role, through the pledge of allegiance to Her Majesty, has now been placed into a condition of servitude. And that same human being also possesses or can exercise a right that not to be held in servitude. As we see in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 8.2, that no one shall be held in servitude. So an individual can stand up and say, I wish to express this right. Now, Canada, as a state party to these covenants, to the International Instrument of Human Rights, it states, and again, in the International Covenant, Article 2.2, it says that Canada must give effect to the rights recognized in the covenant. So we understand, we come to learn that I, as an individual, have a human right and a fundamental freedom that states no one can hold me in servitude. Then, upon further study, I realize that through my pledge of allegiance or oath of citizenship here in Canada, whether voluntarily I did it or whether they're implying that I did it, I have been rendered a subject or a servant of Her Majesty, and I am indeed in servitude. Continuing to study, I find out that I have a human right and a fundamental freedom that no one can hold me in servitude. Now, even apart from this fundamental human right and freedom, when I just think about it, I understand that no one should have the right to make me serve them, to tell me what I can and cannot do. But nevertheless, it's recognized internationally that we, as human beings, have the right to decide who we will serve and what we will serve, if anything. So we have the right not to be held in servitude. And when these covenants came into existence, Canada was a signatory for these covenants. And they are considered a state party to these covenants. And when you look into the International Covenant, it clearly states that Canada must give effect, must. That creates an obligation, must give effect to the rights recognized in the covenant. So I have an individual right not to be held in servitude. Canada, as a state party, you must give effect, you must provide a way, you must provide a measure for me to operate if I choose. not to be held in servitude. Now, when you study the verse a little deeper, it says through legislative means, through the constitutional process, first and foremost. It states that Canada, the state party, has to implement all these rights and freedoms that are contained in the covenants, in their domestic law, in their constitutional process. So now let's go look into the constitutional process and see what it says. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 2, Subsection 2. Where not already provided for by existing legislative or other measures, each state party to the present covenant undertakes to take the necessary steps in accordance with its constitutional process and with the provisions of the present covenant to adopt such legislative or other measures as may be necessary to give effect to the rights recognized in the present covenant. So Canada, as a member, as a state party to these covenants, must, remember, creates an obligation, must give effect that no one shall be held in servitude. And they must do this through the constitutional process or other measures. So, if and when someone decides that they realize that they've been held in servitude, and they don't want to be held in servitude anymore, then Canada must give effect to that. And they're supposed to give effect to this right through the constitutional process or other measures. The Constitution of Canada, 1982. Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Article 7. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. So we're breaking it down just a little bit more. In the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 8.2, it states that no one shall be held in servitude. And then, again, in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 2.2, it says that it must give effect, Canada, the state party, must give effect to this right. That if you don't want to be held in servitude, you don't have to be held in servitude. Now, when you look into the Constitution of Canada, remember we saw that they had to give effect to this right within their constitutional process. We look into the Constitution of Canada, Article number 7, and it states that everyone has the right to liberty. So what's the opposite of servitude? Liberty, being free. Not only that, when you look in the Constitution Act of Canada, Article 26, it's in conjunction with all this about servitude. Because if they're to get funky and freaky with you and say, oh no, this liberty doesn't mean that you have the right not to be Her Majesty's servant and not to be Her Majesty's subject, then you can go down into Article 26. And I'll just show you what Article 26 says. The Constitution Act of Canada, 1982, Article 26. The guarantee in this charter of certain rights and freedoms shall not be construed as denying the existence of any other rights or freedoms that exist in Canada. The Constitution Act of Canada, 1982, Article 26, states that the guarantee in this charter of certain rights and freedoms shall not mean that Canada shall deny the existence of any other rights or freedoms that exist in Canada. So, we know that Canada is a member, is a state party to the International Covenants. The International Covenants grants an individual the right not to be held in servitude. This right must be fulfilled within the constitutional process. In Article 7 we see that it states that everyone has the right to liberty. We invoke our liberty, we break servitude. If it gets a bit rough, we go to 26, we state this, and we know that Canada has an obligation because this right not to be held in servitude, it exists in Canada because it's a member of the International Bill on Human Rights. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 8.2, no one, me and you, my family, your sons, your daughters, no one shall be held in servitude. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 2.2, Canada, as a state party member, must give effect to this right. If I don't want to be held in servitude, you can't force them to be in servitude. In Canada, a citizen has taken a pledge of allegiance, an oath of allegiance, and is a subject and a servant, and is therefore in servitude to Her Majesty. This right of not being held in servitude must transfer through the constitution process of the state party, through the Constitution of Canada, 1982, Article 7. Everyone, the human being, has the right to liberty. Liberty is the opposite of servitude. Article 26 of that constitutional process, Canada cannot deny the covenant rights and freedoms that are expressed. They must give effect to it.